The Vice President is Joe Run in the back, raising his hand. Thank you, Joe. Joe is an attorney and owns his own law firm right here in the city of Ventura. The Treasurer is Brad Hudson. Raise your hand, Brad. He's doing the timer. Brad is staff to Congresswoman Julia Brownlee. And Helen Conley, our token straight person on the board of directors, is in the back. She helped check you in tonight. She's our membership chair. She's supposed to be retired, but let me tell you, she wears me out with everything she does. This is the Bell Arts Factory. Raise your hand if this is the first time you've been here. Oh, so about half of you. Well, it was established 6 years ago by Jim Rice, who is not here. I saw him here a second ago. Oh, there he is, in the back. Yeah. Okay. He's the executive director, and the mission of Bell Arts Factory is to bring people together to celebrate art, education, and community. And they provide opportunities to individual creativity, community collaboration, with the vision of building a stronger, healthier Ventura. Some specific examples of what they do is they teach children, neighborhood children to draw. They provide artists to teach an art class to local schools. And they provide families a place to gather and remember loved ones. When you walked in tonight, you probably noticed all the paintings on the wall. Those are for sale. And if you're interested in purchasing them, Jim left a business card on the table when you checked in. And if you want to make a donation, you can go to bellartsfactory.com. Tonight, KADY TV is live streaming this debate on the internet. And immediately after the debate is done, it will be available on the internet if you want to go back and review it or show it to friends or whatnot. You should have gotten a card when you checked in. That is the KADYTV.com address. Is there anybody who didn't get one, who would like one? Oh, there's a couple up here.
Anybody else?
Camera on the side.
Helen's our runner too. She does everything. Okay, let's see. We have City Council Member Carl Morehouse here. Can you raise your hand? I don't see any other dignitaries. Oh, yes, incumbent Jim Monahan. He's the only incumbent here. He is the only incumbent here tonight.
Here comes one.
Here comes one. What? Oh, and Christy Ware. Council member Christy Ware just entered the room. Okay, so here's the process for tonight. We start at 6:30, we end at 8:30. You're welcome to stay and mingle and munch on the food, drink coffee, whatever, as long as you want to tonight. The candidates will each have a 2-minute opening statement. We have prepared questions. We expect to go through about 8 of them. The moderator will ask those 8 questions first. Then we expect about 4 or 5 questions from the audience. When you checked in at the table, there were index cards and pens. So if you want to ask a question, put it on the index card and grab me or Helen, who was running around earlier, and we'll get the card to the moderator, and then he'll ask the question. I suspect that some of the questions, the prepared questions, will probably address some of your concerns, but if not, please write down your specific questions so the moderator can ask them on your behalf. For the candidates, Treasurer Brad Hudson sitting right in front of you with the timer. He's going to turn on the green light. Turn on the green light. For 1-minute answers, the green light will come on at 30 seconds. He'll then turn the yellow light on, at 45 seconds. And then when the red light comes on, that's 1 minute and your time is up. For the 2-minute opening, the green light will come on at the 1 minute mark, so halfway through. The yellow light will come on at 1 minute and 30 seconds. So you have another 30 seconds to wrap up till that red light comes on. Are there any questions from the candidates on that? No. Okay. Did I mention KDY TV? Yeah, okay, sorry. It's really interesting when you get old, you kind of don't remember things that you did. Okay, so without further ado, I want to introduce David Moran, who has been the moderator for several debates through many, many years throughout the county. And we're very grateful that he volunteered to moderate this debate tonight. So please join me in welcoming David.
How about a nice round of applause for Sean Terrence? Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. We have a good evening. This is the first forum of these council candidates. Filing period just closed yesterday. We're going to start with the opening statements, and I'm going to start on your right with Brian. But before I do, Brian, we have one candidate who was unable to attend, Mr. Andrews, who sent over a statement, and the group had decided that I'll read that opening statement. So this will be 2 minutes, and then we'll follow with Brian after that. So these are the words of Neil Andrews. I have a solid record of service to those who are most vulnerable in our community, the elderly, sick, disabled, mentally ill, and homeless. I have a solid record working to reform our public pension system. I have a solid record of protection of our natural resources, and I have a solid record of promoting economic prosperity and jobs in our community. I stand on my record. I'm one of the few people in Ventura County who ever marched in a civil rights march in the South at a time when it was very dangerous to do so. I'm probably one of the few who ever marched in a peace march during the Vietnam War. I know I'm one of the few who served on an impeached Nixon committee. But I'm also the professor who, when the anti-war riots shut down our university, continued to teach his class and gave exams on schedule. I told my students that I respected their stand against government policy, but they had to understand that it had far less meaning if they then asked to be excused from class to go protest. What gave it value was sacrifice. Not one of our Quaker community was willing to serve in combat during the war, but not one ran off to Canada either. Their service to faith and conscience was in jail. They paid a real price for their convictions, and I have to apologize, I got 2 pages mixed up, but I think you'll be able to follow me. I'm starting at the beginning now. Well, already, like 1 minute in, and I'm making mistakes, but here we go. I'm sorry that I could not attend your forum in person this evening, but I've asked permission for the moderator to read this brief statement in hopes that it will give you some sense of my values and concerns. Most of you know that I'm a strong fiscal conservative. I believe that government must live within its means and simply cannot take on burdens that it cannot pay for. Many of you also know that I'm conservative in a different way, a way that a lot of you call progressive or even liberal, and some can't imagine it not being democratic. That's with a capital D. Let me explain that. I'm a conservative when it comes to individual liberties and civil rights. I believe the constitutional protections of individual liberties and civil rights are sacrosanct and absolute. That means I believe in the absolute equality of every citizen under the law. It means that I believe that government has no right to invade your privacy, restrict your personal freedom, except if you endanger another person or unduly restrict their equal rights. Government must grant. Okay. Government must grant, we won't tell Neil about the microphone, okay? Government must grant and assure every citizen, no matter what religion, nationality, race, sex, or sexual preference, or any other characteristic, equal treatment under the law. I think some of you see that as a liberal or even democratic stand. It is, I suppose, it is also a conservative stand. I believe it's what makes us all Americans. A few of you may know that I am a Quaker. Among Quakers, there are 4 fundamental testimonies. They are basic to our faith. These are truth. If we cannot be trusted to say the truth in all things, how can we expect to be believed when we speak of God? Simplicity. To be understood, we must live, speak, and act simply, lest excess carry us too far from our service to God and our community. Equality. We believe that God is somehow present with us and a part of us always, and for this reason there can be no basis for setting one above another. and peace, because God is within each of us. It is a sacrilege to do violence to another. I've served the people of Ventura diligently for 12 years on the city council. I'm not beholden to any group, frankly more often than I like in the minority on issues, but my voice is clear and my principles sound and understood. You know where I come from and you know my values. I'd like your support in this election. And I hope you will support principle and accomplishment in this election. I hope I can have your vote. That's the words of Neil Andrews. Okay. And because we have a tight timeline and a lot of questions, we're going to hold applause till the end of the evening, so no booing. That would be directed at me, I assume, but no booing or hissing. And we're now going to start off on schedule. Brian Lee Rensher, 2 minutes, and you have your timer up front. Thank you. Brian.
Thank you. Creating jobs should be Ventura City Council's top priority. High-paying jobs in the community increases our wealth, quality of life, and tax base. Without a growing tax base, basic city services such as police, fire, parks, planning, etc., cannot keep pace with a growing population and inflation. The council has been focusing for too long on tourism and other low-wage industries and lost its tax base in the process. This is why city services are less than they used to be. When I first came to Ventura in 1968, the city was the richest in the county. Not anymore. What happened? The city council cannot tax its way to prosperity. They cannot cut their way to increase public services. We can only work our way out of the situation by creating high-paying jobs that increase our overall per capita wealth through intelligent economic development policies and practices. The good old days of crony capitalism, backroom deals, must come to an end at City Hall if we are to achieve this community goal. Intellectual honesty and hard work are the keys to our collective financial success, both personally and at City Hall. We need fresh faces and fresh thinking in the council chambers. We need a fresh start. You voters can do what you've always done in the past, but I'll show you that if you do so this election, you will certainly get what you've always got. The question is, how much longer can you afford to keep doing this? Do you actually want a more prosperous future and a better city? My 22 years of hands-on experience in city government, when combined with my extensive education, intelligence, energy, and creativity, puts me in a unique position to actually deliver high-paying jobs to Venturans. I usually achieve the goals I set for myself. In addition to my MBA degree, I graduated with bachelor's degrees in finance and marketing from the 15th best school of business and economics in the nation, earning an overall A grade point average. I'm highly trained to succeed in this endeavor, and I will succeed with your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and our hold the applause, please. And we'll go to our next candidate, Richard Francis. And Richard, we'll have you stay seated so we're all even, okay?
I can't see people in the back, so I'll wave to you now. My name is Richard Francis. I am running because what I've seen in the last 20 years is a slippage of the standards and principles that are really hard to build. 23 years ago, I served on the Ventura City Council. I was on the council from 87 to 91, and I was mayor from 89 to 91. So I bring some unique qualities to this race that few others can talk about. I have experience. I have experience not only on the council, but experience throughout the county. In the late 80s, the early 90s, up through 2000, I worked countywide for the SOAR initiative. I wrote most of the SOAR initiatives in every city. I negotiated with each city council on those issues, and ultimately SOAR is now the law of the county. It's a unique ordinance because it ties together not only growth controls in the county, but symbiotic growth controls in each city. So that kind of experience is really unmatched among the candidates here tonight. And I also bring a vision that is different than anything else you'll see. And that vision started when I was on the council, and we had no agricultural designation in the land use plan in the city. We got an agricultural designation while we did the general plan in '89. And then the SOAR initiative made agriculture like a premium in the county. So that kind of vision set the stage for a council that ultimately proved to be progressive and a city that worked on those principles. Ultimately, what we started to see is an erosion of that, and now—
I have to stop you there, Richard.
we have no progressive council.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Lori Brown.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce myself. First of all, I have my two wonderful parents over here who are supporting me. They came to the city of Ventura in the 60s. And my mother went to Ventura College and became a registered nurse. And my father fought in the Vietnam War and came back and went to Ventura College himself and ended up working for the oil companies. And as we know, the oil industries and the pumps right now and the fracking is a big issue right now. I think it's important to understand that we as a community need to come together for the progressive issues for the city of Ventura. I was born at Community Memorial Hospital, raised on the east side of the bird trap, and across the street from where I lived, there was an empty field. And right now, the city of Ventura needs to think hard and long about smart urban growth and development, with, of course, understanding that the human interest must be considered and the environment first. In addition to that, I went to California Lutheran University. I grew up here, of course, and I went to Buena, I went to Ventura College, and ended up going to Cal Lutheran. I have my master's degree in public policy and administration. And I bring a unique perspective because I am staff for the city of Oxnard. I understand the staff perspective. I understand what agenda preparation is. I understand contract administration. I understand what is required of council members. And I understand that there needs to be a balance between public-private relationships. I understand that everyone needs to work together. Polarizing on issues does not get the work done. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to work for the city of Ventura.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Eric Nasarenko.
I'd like to begin by thanking Sean Harris and the Stonewall Democratic Club of Ventura County, and thank you to you, David, for hosting the first of many great exchanges among the city council candidates for 2013. Ventura is my home. It's where I live, it's where I work, it's where I chose to raise my family with my wife, Julia. It's also where I help coach youth soccer and serve as an ASO referee. It's also where I serve on the city's Library Advisory Commission, helping to bring the best in arts and education to our city. It's also where I protect its residents, serving as a deputy district attorney, where I prosecute child abusers, stalkers, and perpetrators of domestic violence. Community service runs very deep, and it's something that I am proud of. I'm running for city council because I want to deepen my commitment to community service and help this city. It's a fantastic place to live and raise a family. I want to make it even better. I want to make it better by taking care of our streets, fixing our potholes, trimming our trees, making sure our bathrooms are clean and open, and that our parks are improved and our libraries are funded. I also want to help strengthen public safety in our communities by keeping our fire stations open, by engaging in innovative crime prevention strategies, and by continuing to work with the Ventura Police Department to help them root out and identify those who are responsible for the increase in property crimes. I think this city is special, and I want to keep it that way. I want to strengthen our relationship with our school district, engaging in joint sharing opportunities between our schools and our city. I want to build our economy by focusing on our assets and advantages, like our harbor, like our deep and strong and historically rich manufacturing base.
Going to have to stop you there, Eric.
Thank you all very much.
Our next candidate is Paul Meehan.
Hi, everybody. I also wanted to thank the Stonewall Democrats for having me here, having this forum for us to discuss. I also wanted to thank the other candidates because without them, I'd be sitting here all by myself and everything like that. I think this is a good opportunity to tell you a little bit about me because most of the folks in this room don't know me and don't know what I stand for or how I think or where I come from. I'm a UCSB graduate. I have a degree in environmental studies, but the gray beard will tell you it's not a recent graduation. So the environment and a healthy ecosystem in both the ocean and on the land are very important to me. I worked on the Channel Islands for 12 years, both for island packers, as a naturalist and boat captain. I took people out on the boat and shared history about the flora and fauna that you would see out there. I also worked for the National Park Service as a law enforcement ranger, both at Channel Islands, Virgin Islands, and a place called Lassen Volcanic National Park up in Northern California. It's a beautiful place. Go there if you haven't been there. But, I currently work for FedEx in a senior tech support role, and my wife runs a small business in town here, and I'm a silent partner. I don't get to say anything, but I'm a very silent partner. Why I want to run? I care deeply about Ventura. I do have two small children, 5 and 8 in town, and I want my plan is for them to grow up here, and I want Ventura to be the best place it possibly can. So I want to take an active role in that process if I can. And my role at FedEx, I really have two positions. One is that I take a complex product, and it's based in hardware and software, and I explain it to people who are not familiar with how to use that. And the reverse is true as well. I have to finish it after.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Our next candidate is David Swafar, and I'll remind all the candidates, speak right into the mic, please.
Is this close enough? Yeah. I will probably be the briefest of all of the candidates. The fact of the matter is that I was born and raised in this town. I have only one goal. It's that my children, and my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren, and my great-great-grandchildren can experience the same experience I had with Ventura growing up. And that's it.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Jim Monahan.
Thank you, David. I too was born in Ventura. Yeah, we was Ventura. Okay. Anyway, my name is Jim Monahan. I'm a former mayor and deputy mayor of the city of Ventura. I graduated Ventura High School, Ventura College. I also moved to Long Beach many years ago. I think it was, I forgot now, 59 years. To attend Long Beach State College, which was my goal. At that time, my mother called me home. My father was terminally ill. And I came back to Ventura Avenue, where I was born, and started working with my father until he passed. I owned and operated American Welding Company for over 45 years. And I worked with all businesses on the west side. In fact, at the present time, I'm working with about 100 businesses who have a lot of problems with the current west side plan. I'm in the process of processing a policy consideration to the city council to take another look at the west side plan that would give businesses that are here more protection. I've been taking council members and the mayor and other people on tours of the avenue through the industrial part of our city, and they were just amazed at what kind of businesses that we operate here and the type of product that's made right here on Ventura Avenue that is shipped all over the world to Russia, Canada, Japan, China, and they're made by local residents who live here on the west side, and these are good paying jobs. They're not part-time jobs, and they're not minimum wage jobs by any means. They're machinists and welders, and there are good jobs that we provide right here on the avenue. We need to protect those jobs and make sure they don't leave the avenue. I know these businesses intend to expand and develop their companies, and I want to be there to help them do that. I think bringing jobs to the city is a good idea, but it's not something the city council can do. What we can do is provide services to the companies that are already here, make sure we don't make it more difficult for them to remain in business so that they can expand and hire more people. And that's one of my goals. Another goal is to...
I'm going to have to stop you there, Mr. Monahan.
I was on the first page.
You'll have a minute at the end to begin. So we're now going to start candidates with the questions. You'll have 1 minute, so I remind you that when you see the yellow light, that means you have 15 seconds. Richard, we're going to start with you on this question, and the first question from the Stonewall Democrats is about homelessness. Stonewall Democrats are concerned with those individuals who are marginalized by society because of its climate and geographic location, plus being the county seat and provider of services. Ventura has long had a transient population. So the question, Richard, what are your thoughts regarding the homeless in Ventura, and what should the city do about them?
It's an intractable problem. It's one of the things that I've worked on with the Hillsides Conservancy. We've got the Ventura River Parkway. We have property, the Conservancy has property in the river bottom, and we have helped move people out of the river bottom and hopefully get them relocated in the tent city that's over in the Santa Clara River. I have also spoken several times at the City Council regarding their attempts to marginalize poor people by eliminating, for instance, the inclusionary zoning issue. And I've really worked hard to try to make sure that there's some upward mobility. If inclusionary zoning is in place, then people have a place to go. But the other thing is, I see the city, this handout, not a handout, they need a handout too. And there's time when the non-governmental agencies, Project Understanding, Turning Point, need to be able to give those people a real hand.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Our next candidate, Lori Brown, the question again about homelessness. And what are your thoughts regarding the homeless in Ventura? What should the city do about that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. I feel very strongly about the homeless population in the city of Ventura. Currently, there are over 400 children homeless on the street that are school-age children. I'm a mother myself. I have 3 teenage boys, and a lot of us are a couple of paychecks away from the street. And I think it's important not only to try to preserve the middle class, but as far as homeless people are concerned, it's important that we can include them in our strategic planning process. I think the city of Ventura needs to revisit the 10-year plan to end homelessness. We also need to revisit why social service task force funding has been rerouted into agencies that are no longer able to provide the necessary services like showers, food, and clothing. And also, we also need to help. We all heard about Harbor Church, and I feel like Harbor Church is shouldered with the burden of serving the homeless.
Thank you, Lori. Our next candidate, Eric Masarenko, your thoughts about the homeless in Ventura. What should the city do about them?
2 things with respect to what I've done on behalf of the homeless community. One is I was the deputy district attorney that staffed the county's homeless court. It's a program wherein, in exchange for performing community service, homeless individuals could work off infractions and fines, and the goal was for them to be able to get their license back so they would have transportation and they would be mobile. Secondly, I'm very supportive of what we're doing in the criminal justice system right now with respect to the Community Intervention Court, a very successful program whereby long-time inebriants who are on the street, instead of going through the perpetual cycle of probation and incarceration, are able to work with case managers, they're able to work with the police department, they're able to engage in family reunification strategies, and they're able to get the support that they need. And that support should be housing, it should be behavioral and mental health counseling, and it should also be substance abuse help. I think we have a commitment to our homeless in this community, and I believe that as a future city council member, I'll be able to assist them.
Stop it there. Okay, Paul Meehan is our next candidate. The question again about homeless in Ventura. What should the city do about it? What are your thoughts?
Well, the truth is I don't have a deep and detailed plan to assist the homeless. I know we do have a lot of resources in town. There are places for them to get food. There are places for them to take shelter. I think it may be a matter of education. One of the things I feel strongly about is I'd rather educate than legislate. If you can educate somebody into doing the right thing, that's a better method than to legislate them into doing the right thing. And I don't marginalize them myself, because a friend of mine told me there's a man who was a former city council candidate that he suspects is homeless, but has vast knowledge about running for council and the inner workings of the council, and so I'm going to seek him out and ask for his advice, see what he thinks. So.
Okay, our next candidate is David Swapar.
When it comes to the homeless, I have only one opinion, which is just my opinion. It actually starts with an early understanding of the mentality, and when that is addressed, the mental issues of the homeless versus the people that choose to be homeless, is where we start to break ground on the ways to address that problem. Other than that, there's really no way to address it until you break those two things apart.
Thank you. And Mr. Monahan, same question to you. What are your thoughts regarding the homeless in Ventura? What should the city do about that?
Well, I don't know if it's all the city's responsibility, but I'm sure that we could share some. I don't think moving the people from one river to the other river is going to solve the problem, as mentioned earlier. I think that the city could establish a facility somewhere that would be a multi-purpose facility where all homeless, especially women and children, could go to and have their needs taken care of immediately. Right now we don't have that. I think that we need to do more than we're doing, of course. But in 1988, I started the very first river cleanup, the Ventura River. At no cost to the city, we helped move all the homeless people out of the river, and we moved all of the debris, all of the trash, bicycle parts and everything out of the river, had it all cleaned up, thinking that that would be the last time that that would ever happen. And of course, soon thereafter, it was back again. It was not maintained properly. So I think the program today to keep the people out of the river and develop the river trail is the right thing to do.
You need to stop there. Thank you. And Brian, same question to you. What is your thoughts regarding the homeless in Ventura? What should the city do about that?
Well, Jesus of Nazareth said, you'll always have your poor. And as usual, Jesus was right. He also spoke of compassion and helping our less fortunate brothers and sisters. And that's where we need to go. We need to start helping people. Now, just because people are financially stressed should not be a crime. However, some of these people out there are bad actors. They are criminals, and they should be dealt with criminally. You have to differentiate between those people that are in hard economic times and those people that are just a real problem. And so the city's had ample opportunity to address the former and has dropped the ball, such as losing the site of Day Road for transitional housing. It's had lots of money. But ultimately, we're going to need to have jobs in this community so that those people that are just a couple paychecks away or on the tipping edge or just fell off can get back on their horses and get back in the game, and also to have the city funds to be able to help those nonprofits that are helping and have a more compassionate and be helped to start solving this problem. It's a community problem. It's going to take the entire community working very closely with each other with a lot of compassion to solve it.
Thank you, Brian. And we're going to start the next question. Lori, you'll be first this time. Economic development process. Economic development is an important part of the community's vitality. However, so is protection of a community's resources, such as water, air quality, and historically significant sites. Do you believe that Ventura's project review system is overly regulatory, too easy, and developer-oriented, or just about right? Lori.
Thank you. I don't think either one of those terms I would use. I think that it can be reviewed, and in that review process, my profession is in community development. So I understand economic development, I understand the public-private relationship, I understand the need of bringing business into the city in order to generate funds and revenue. I understand that it is important to protect the environment at the same time. So I propose that with the city, in addition to bringing in new business, and that infill development should be what's important when it comes to economic development. And in order to streamline the process with the city, I think it's important to review that process, get the buy-in of city staff, and find out where they think the kinks are, and not have things happen like when the grading up on that side of the hill happened, that someone who wants to build a porch can't build a porch, but someone who wants to grade just go ahead and grade at their own free will. I think there is some things and kinks that need to be worked out, but it can be done.
Thank you. Eric, same question to you. Do you believe that Ventura's project review system is overly regulatory, too easy and developer-oriented, or about right?
What I hear from businesses and individuals that want to come to this community is that sometimes it takes too long, that there's a little too much red tape they have to get through. There are too many times where they don't necessarily give the information in a timely fashion. I think that's something, as a city council member, that I'd like to work on. I think we need to be responsive and receptive to the business community, yet at the same time, we also have to be cautious. There have to be screening mechanisms. What is it that they're going to do here? How many jobs will it create? What type of economic growth will it produce? And specifically, what are the consequences for all of those issues? That is, environmentally, in terms of our neighborhood and keeping its characteristics. We also have to ask ourselves, as we grow as a city, where do we want that growth to happen? I agree that we should first reuse our existing inner core, and then thereafter think about other opportunities, namely the commercial corridor that's existing next to the auto center, which I think would be an ideal place for a future retail destination.
Thank you, Eric. And Paul, same question to you. Do you believe Ventura's project review system is overly regulatory, too easy and developer oriented, or just about right?
Well, I feel like it can
And into the microphone, please.
I feel like it can always be reviewed. Times change, expectations change. I feel in general that Ventura is a little business unfriendly. Several years ago, my wife moved her sole proprietorship from one building in Ventura to another, and shortly thereafter she was approached by a city agent or got a phone call saying, hey, tell me about the business equipment that you have on site. And hers is a very small business, very small footprint. She has a desk and a chair, a printer, and a computer. So she declared that, and she got a tax bill. But then she also got a visit, a follow-up visit, asking, looking over the things that she had to make sure she was truthful. And that just seems business unfriendly to me, and it seems like a place where we could improve.
Thank you. David, same question to you.
Can I take a second and have you repeat?
Certainly. So and that's good for the audience. The economic development is an important part of a community's vitality. However, so is protection of a community's resources, such as water, air quality, and historically significant sites. Do you believe that Ventura's project review system is overly regulatory, too easy and developer-oriented, or just about right?
Actually, that's really interesting because I believe that the current status is right where it should be. However, there are a lot of steps afterwards that come into mind. My father had a project not too long ago that ended up being, after they had presented the plans, everything was done, after they'd done all the work, the inspector decided to step in and say that it was inappropriate. So there's a redundancy in the system somewhere. That's the only downfall. But as it is right now, I do believe that they take into consideration all of the things that you had mentioned.
Thank you. And Jim Monahan, same question.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that the city council tries very hard to be business friendly. I think that we are. When you talk to the people who are trying to do business with the city, you will get a different story. That it's very difficult. The process takes a long time. There's a couple of projects in Ventura at the present time that the developer started over 10 years ago. In fact, in I think two cases, the people died before they got the project approved. So it's really a cumbersome process, and it needs to be streamlined. It needs to be looked at. I don't think that we need to do away with it, but I think there are ways that we can improve it and make it more business friendly, and we can bring more jobs to Ventura. And I think that's the only way we're going to improve our economic situation, is to bring more jobs to Ventura.
Thank you. Brian, same question to you. Do you think the project review system is overly regulatory, too easy and developer-oriented, or about right?
Well, it's not right. There's a number of things. For instance, we have M1 properties that have been rezoned for housing. We need the industrial properties. There's people like the Freeney's that did everything that they were told to do and were denied, and then that fellow that cut into the hillside and got a permit. Bottom line is that we need to make sure that we have adequate public review. The process had more in the past. It's become more internal, where the public has less say in these projects. I believe that the public should have a say in these projects, but the most important thing is that developers have to have a project with certainty. They have to know that if they do A, B, and C, they get a project. And that's what happened with Freeney's, is they did A, B, and C, and then E, D, and F. When they were told to do so, they got no project. Whereas the guy in the hill, he didn't have to do anything, and he got a project, and he got a permit after the fact. But the most important thing I would say again is that we have to have adequate public review, but it has to be streamlined, and it has to have some certainty so that all sides have a fair say, and we can move this along.
And Richard, we'll wrap up with you on this question about your view of the Ventura project review system.
I think it's about right. I have some real issues with the way the city appears to all too often govern by variance. So we have people coming in. If you just followed the rules, it would take a lot less time. But when you say, I want to do it differently, it takes a lot longer. I agree with Brian that public review is really important. Public review takes time. So I don't see that that's a particular problem, but it is a problem when some people get permits and some people don't, because sometimes variances are granted and sometimes they're not. I think we should have clear rules, and if you follow the rules, it would sure take a lot less time. The people that take 10 years to get the project done, that's really about the economy. I know of projects that were approved 10 years ago that didn't get built and haven't been built yet because the economy has been so soft.
Thank you. And we'll move on to the next question. Eric, you'll be up first this time. This is about sustainable development. Prior to the visioning effort undertaken from 1998 to 2000, Ventura had large swings in pro-growth and no-growth councils. The visioning effort helped quell that, particularly as Venturans decided to stop suburban sprawl in order to protect agricultural lands and to not develop in our scenic hills through ballot measures. Consequently, Venturans agreed to focus on infill development and higher densities in some parts of town. What are your thoughts on sustainable development?
Two thoughts immediately come to mind. The first is we have to be mindful of water supply, because water is a finite resource. What's happening in Lake Casitas, what's happening with our groundwater, and what's happening with the Ventura River puts a constraint on growth. So we have to be mindful as we move forward, either with infill and or residential tract housing, that is something that needs to be adequate and it needs to be there in order to ensure water supply to these homes and these businesses. My feeling about infill is that it is a way to reduce blight. It takes care of abandoned buildings and vacant lots. It serves the urban core and it reuses existing properties, but not all people want to be, for example, above a shop or near a restaurant. Some people want to live in a traditional tract house with a vaulted ceiling and maybe a larger backyard. So my feeling is we need to have both. We need to have infill, high density, new urbanism growth, as well as traditional residential development in other parts of the city.
Thank you. And Paul, same question to you. Your thoughts about development here in Ventura County, and what are your thoughts on sustainable development?
I too love the idea of infill development for a multitude of reasons. There's so many beautiful green areas outside our city, and I don't think we should sacrifice those to development of housing or commercial type facilities. But as Mr. Manfranco said, it is all key. It all boils down to water. And if we can figure out ways to reuse water, make use of rainwater, I think we can achieve what we want to achieve in terms of growth. But another benefit of that is it does remove blight. There are a number of businesses along the central section of Ventura that you drive through there and it just seems like it's not the nicest place in town. So if we can focus on those types of areas and improve the look of the city, I think we'll be in good shape.
Thank you. David, again, some of this question. The visioning effort helped to quell those past problems with the councils, particularly as Venturans decided to stop suburban sprawl in order to protect agricultural lands and to not develop in the scenic hills through ballot measures. So consequently, Venturans agreed to focus on infill development at higher densities in some parts of town. What are your thoughts on sustainable development?
So first off, I want to point out that the most important part of that whole statement or question is that originally, as Ventura spread out in through all of our green areas, we spread too fast. And that's kind of where we're looking at now. Infill is a great idea as it's stated, except there are key issues, which resource, water is one. More importantly and more dramatic is parking, is the everyday trash, the everyday what happens on the street. And there are, I'm fortunate enough to live on this part of town, right down the street, that there's no way they're gonna ever infill this part. So infill is a great term that's been used a lot. It's just misused, and I think that that is one direction that the city could take us to really redefine that what infill means.
Thank you very much, David. And Jim, same question to you. What are your thoughts on sustainable development?
Well, I think we can stay in line with what's being discussed here right now about infill, as you know. Here recently, the city council voted not to convert some industrial land into a residential property because it was never intended that industrial property be considered infill property. And so every time you take any industrial property out of the market, you lose jobs. And of course, we need homes too, but we don't need to replace industrial property with housing. Another myth that I'd like to clear up here is that I've been on the city council 36 years, and not once since I've been on the city council have we taken 1 acre of ag land, agricultural land, out of the greenbelt. We have never done that. Any land that you saw developed in the last 36 years in the east side of Ventura was already planned for development. It was not in the greenbelt. We protected our greenbelts from day one since I've been on the city council.
Thank you. And Brian, same question to you about sustainable development. What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, it's a question of what do we mean by sustainable development. Let's look at the Parklands on the east side. It was named Parklands because they're supposed to have parks, but it really doesn't have parks. And the land that was originally zoned there for a 5-acre park was rezoned to condominiums. The housing, the property across the way was supposed to have been a supermarket. And they went ahead and they put senior housing in there. So now there's no supermarket there. There's no parks there. When they were doing the whole planning out there, as an afterthought, well, oh yeah, schools, and then fire stations. And the problem is that you have these developers that come in that want to make a buck, and they don't even live here. And they change our policies through planning, and then we end up with no parks, no places for schools, no supermarkets, crowded streets, no parking, all these things. Sustainable is thinking of what you want to do before you do it and sticking to the plan. But that's not what we do. We need to start sticking to the plan. We need to do this thoughtfully. We can't let these outsiders tell us how it's going to be.
Thank you, Brian. And same question to you, Richard. Your thoughts on sustainable development?
I think it's a bit of a softball question for me. I was one of the authors in 1995 of the SOAR initiative that helped stabilize, as you described it, the wild swings, and help set the platform for the visioning process that we frankly envisioned at the time the SOAR was adopted. The idea was, if you can't sprawl, developers will develop downtown. And that vision has largely worked. It's worked in Ventura, it's worked in Camarillo, it's worked in Oxnard, it's worked all over the county, because developers will develop. You just tell them where it's appropriate. And it's appropriate in Ventura, in infill. And that was part of the original SOAR plan. It was the visioning plan. And what's really bothered me and got me involved again is I've seen such slippage in that support for the vision. And what we've lost the Progressive Council. We've now had a city manager that was hired to follow that fired.
Thank you. And Lori, we'll finish this question with you. Your thoughts on sustainable development?
I believe sustainable development is balanced communities. And balanced communities means balanced development. So balanced development means architecturally, beautifully sound, mixed-use, affordable housing development. So a mixture of single-family homes and lofts and condos so that it can serve the community's service workers, the white-collar workers, the students, the college graduates, anyone who lives in the community, grew up in the community, and would like to stay in the community. I feel it also means utilizing green technology when it's available. It also means introducing clean business in the city of Ventura. So the Olivos Adobe corridor that is proposed to be developed, I feel should consider clean development and make as a requirement or develop standard procedures for certain developments so that when they come in, there's rules, as everyone else has said, that everyone goes by and it doesn't change every single time and it's not variable.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next question. Paul, you're going to be up first this time. The question is about affordable housing. Because Ventura is a coastal community in mid to Southern California, housing costs have always been a bit higher than other parts of the state and the country. What are your thoughts on affordable housing? Go ahead and pull that mic in. Good.
Truthfully, I'm not in favor of subsidized housing. It seems like the market should dictate the price of houses that are available. I mean, there's a reason why houses on top of the hill cost more than houses at the bottom of the hill. And I don't know, I'm just not a big fan of government intervention in the cost of things in general.
All right, thank you. And we'll move on to David Swaffer. Same question about affordable housing.
Okay, so that's a very sensitive issue because you would have to first address what affordable means. If you're dealing with somebody that is what in quote unquote middle income, you can't afford to live here. If you're dealing with somebody in anywhere below, you can't afford to live here. So affordable housing is actually a misnomer. What needs to be addressed is wages and what they dictate, and the market is no longer in charge of what goes on here. There is an ability to have some sort of a crossroads. And this is not exactly the forum to discuss what that goes, but I just want to stress that there is no such thing as affordable housing.
Thank you very much. Jim, same question to you on affordable housing.
You know, that's a pretty tough question because I think most of our housing is affordable. It's what it is. And that when you look, for example, on the avenue here, about 1100 block, the housing authority built a complex there, 3 stories for 12 units. They paid $625,000 per unit to build that project. That's ridiculous. You don't go out and build affordable housing and pay $600,000 per unit. I'm in favor of taking that money and working with the neighborhoods and the communities. Let's help the people that live in these houses fix them up. You can spread that same money over hundreds of houses and help people restore and rebuild their own home. And we'd say you could loan that money to them when their property sells sometime in the future. We could recoup that money and then invest it in more homes. And I think we need to restore and rebuild our own communities to keep it affordable for the people who already live here.
Thank you. Brian, same question to you. What are your thoughts on affordable housing?
Well, the regional housing needs assessment given to us by the Southern California Association of Governments tells us how many affordable units we're supposed to produce. The city council's idea is to take our money and give it to like Cabrillo, and they build affordable units at $500,000 a pop. That's really expensive. Whereas we could just as easily, you have the Granny Flats issue and the grandfather, we could take that money, we could give it to these people and get them wired right, watered right, everything, bring them up to code, and then count those as new units. We'd increase our tax base because they would be assessed, and we could throw those units at Rena and lower our numbers, and force like Thousand Oaks and Camarillo to start carrying their fair share. So it's not that we haven't had the money, it's not that we don't know what the solution is. The council just refuses to be spendthrifty and humanitarian to take the obvious approach, and that's to fix these Granny Flats and count as affordable units. And until we start doing that, show our humanity and show our brains, we're never going to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, same question to you on affordable housing.
Unfortunately, houses that exist, Granny Flats, can't be counted for RENA numbers. I did serve on the board of directors of the Carrillo Economic Development Corporation, and I think they do a great job. And it's one of the jobs that the city has is to make properties available and the regulations suitable so that Cabrillo can come in and build affordable housing. They've done it over and over again. There are all kinds of non-governmental organizations that are willing to tackle that problem. And they get federal money, it's not the city's money, and that federal money is directed specifically to building affordables for the city of Ventura. So it can be done. It really frosts me when the city does undercut those few programs that are available, like inclusionary zoning, that will allow a developer to add to the RENA numbers and fulfill the demands of the state through the SCAG process.
Thank you. Lori, same question. What are your thoughts on affordable housing?
I believe that everyone deserves to live in the community that they grew up in, whether they make $100,000 a year or not. It is not fair. It is not fair that a woman with children can't find affordable housing in the city that they grew up in, whether they can find work or not after they put themselves through school for 7 years. It is not fair. There is a lot of things that the city can do to address the needs. Inclusionary housing is one of them. Increasing the number of required affordable housing per market rate housing homes is another. In addition to this, affordable housing, it may very well be about what is the definition of affordable housing. But we have to recognize that there are many daughters and sons of this community who grew up here, who can't afford here, who are not on drugs, who are not homeless, who work and deserve to live here too.
Thank you. Eric, we're going to wrap up this question with you. What are your thoughts on affordable housing?
I too am supportive of affordable housing. One, I think it's good public policy. If we're going to have a thriving hospitality and tourism industry in this city, we need places for those who serve our restaurants, who work in our hotels to live. That's basic. Secondly, we need to comply with state law. State law requires cities to provide affordable housing. Third, state law also requires us, Senate Bill 375, which became law about 5 years ago, to cut down on greenhouse gases. So when people are coming from other communities, they're traveling by bus or car, they are leaving a carbon footprint. If there's housing here in the city for them, they are going to be able to serve our environment and also make our air cleaner. I am a proponent, most specifically, of the in lieu fee because I believe in an in lieu fee system. The city has more flexibility and creativity on how to use affordable housing funds. So if you're going to develop in Ventura, I would say to the developer, in exchange for that right to build in our city, give us some money and we will use it as a city as we see fit for affordable housing.
Thank you. And we're going to move on to the next question. David, you're going to be up first. This one is about fracking. Okay, now, candidates, there is a map in front of you that deals with fracking. So here's the question. There are 42 oil well development sites located within the city limits that are new, active, idle, buried, or plugged, with several in the Ventura riverbed, according to the California Department of Conservation. So the question, David, would you support having the city of Ventura oversee and regulate any new or reworked oil well development? What do you know about the efforts by state legislators to expose the process of fracking and oil development activities in Ventura?
What the frack are you talking about? So basically, I don't know, the history of this town is built on oil. Fracking is it's not a newer technology, it's in the forefront now. We've just started to hear about it. I personally couldn't oversee a fracking operation, but I don't think that that means that I would say there should be no fracking, basically. I don't, because I don't understand it, and I'm pretty well educated when it comes to those things. And I have no idea, so I say, until I know, I can't say, but there should be nothing.
Okay, thank you very much. And Jim, same question to you. Pull that microphone over. It's about fracking. There's the 42 oil well development sites located within the city limits. Would you support having the city of Ventura oversee and regulate any new or reworked oil well development? And what do you know about the efforts of state legislators?
I've worked in all this in Ventura County for many, many years, and I don't know of any oil wells in the city limits of Ventura. If there's any in the city limits of Ventura, I'm very surprised. There's some within our sphere of influence, not in the city. Oil wells, we are water. Fracking usually occurs in 3 to 4 miles down below the surface. No way is it ever contaminated water, like some people have alluded to. The fracking process is nothing new. They've been doing it for about 50 years right here in Ventura County, and we've never had a problem here. That it amazes me that this has come to be such an issue. I think that the state laws that have been passed, that are being looked at and reviewed, would suffice for what is needed to manage oil wells. The Chamber of Commerce in Ventura studied this issue, and they came out in supporting fracking, and that was the Ventura Chamber of Commerce. We had a very good presentation.
Thank you very much. Brian? Your thoughts about fracking? Would you support having the city oversee and regulate any new development? And what do you know about the efforts of state legislators?
Well, one of the problems with humans is we have this tendency to just because we can, we do. We never ask, should we? A good example would be nuclear power. We can crack the atom, therefore we start doing it. Now we got 70,000 metric tons of nuclear waste and we don't know what to do with it. Look at bioengineering, same thing. Oh, we can, so let's start doing it. We don't know what's going to happen. These things we have to walk around and nonsense. It's that same thing with fracking. Okay, we really haven't studied it. We don't know when it's good, when it's not good, what it's going to do, what it's not going to do. I'm very reticent to move on something that I don't really understand, and I'm not an expert, but I'm a pretty intelligent man, and I know a lot of people that are experts really don't understand it. So until we actually know what it means and what it does and what the risks are and what the risks aren't, I ain't gonna do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, your thoughts on fracking?
If you haven't seen the movie Gasland, you need to see it. It's unbelievable what fracking does to people's homes and environment. The thing that, the reason we don't know anything about it is because there's no transparency. Senator Fran Tapley, to answer the question, has proposed a statute that says you have to get a permit. You have to disclose what chemicals you're using. The governor has proposed a contrary statute that would not require the permit but still have disclosure. I think Fran Tapley, the editorial in this morning's paper, supporting it, I think it's the best way to go. Until we know, we really shouldn't be doing it. The other issue, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday about the state of Texas. It's oil rich but water poor. Fracking requires incredible amounts of water, and as has been recited here tonight, water is critical to the city of Ventura's future. We can't be using it for fracking.
Thank you. Lori, your thoughts about development of oil wells and regulating them here in Ventura, and your information on state legislators' work?
Yes, I'd like to first say that although the wells currently are not in the city of Ventura, they're in close vicinity to the city of Ventura. They're in the county land, but they're right over there. You just drive a mile over, not even a mile, and they're right over there. And I feel like they affect our community, they're in our community, and although they're not within our city limits, I feel like we should have a say over what happens with that. The water itself may not have been contaminated directly, but the chemicals do seep through, and that's what I would be more concerned about. Also, the breaking up of the tables underneath the ground, even though it's 2 or 3 miles down, we have stories reported all over the country about sinkholes. Does anybody know what the long-term effects of fracking? And fracking in the past was vertical, it is now at a slant, so you're not just breaking up dirt and ground and rock and solid directly, it's across. So we need to be careful, and I think we should do it.
Thank you. Eric, same question to you on fracking.
We need a statewide or federal regulatory agency to do 3 things. 1, give us notice. 2, provide us disclosure. And 3, have enforcement powers. First, notice. We need to know as the public, where is fracking occurring, what wells, and how often. The best way to do that, I believe, is through a public permitting process. Secondly, there needs to be disclosure. What chemicals are you using, in what quantities, and how often? We deserve to know that as the public. 3, there needs to be a regulatory body that oversees this process. In answer to your question, David, I don't think the city of Ventura would be the best regulatory body. I think the Environmental Protection Agency and/or a well-enforced and well-funded division of oil and gas at the state level would be the best regulatory agency to take on this task, because we simply don't have the staff and the resources and the enforcement powers as a city to do it here. And also fracking goes across jurisdictions, counties, cities, and throughout the state.
Thank you. Paul, we're going to wrap up with you on this question about fracking.
It seems like when you've read the question, it's changed a couple times. Could you read it again, please?
Be happy to. So there are 42 oil well development sites located within the city limits that are new, active, idle, buried, or plugged, with several in the Ventura riverbed. This is according to the California Department of Conservation. Would you support having the city of Ventura oversee and regulate any new or reworked oil well development? And what do you know about the efforts by state legislators to expose the process of fracking and oil development activities in Ventura?
Well, there's a couple of issues addressed in that question. If somebody wants to drill for oil within the city limits, then of course, I think the city should have some say in that. If there is a process outside the city limits or nearby that affects our groundwater, then I think we should have some say over what's going on there too. But fracking, my understanding is that they take hot water and shove it way down to the ground, and the oil that floats up, they collect. So the problem is that then that has an effect on the groundwater that is remaining underground, and so that's where the issues lie. And so if that turns out to be a problem, if there's any affectation of our groundwater, then yes, we should indeed have a say over that. But if somebody comes to the city with the plan to make a new well, then yes, we should address it. But I do think that there are bodies in place currently that we can turn to for their expert opinion. The EPA, for example, there's lots of regulation agencies in place that could help us in that.
All right, thank you. And this will be the last question that was a prepared one by the Stonewall Democrats, then we'll get to your questions. We're going to start with you, Jim. The question was actually for non-incumbents, so I'm going to read the question first, then I'm going to morph it to fit you. As a non-incumbent, for the rest of you, you are obviously running as an outsider and feel that there is a need for change on the council. Which of the current incumbents do you believe you are most politically aligned with, and why? So, Jim, I'll ask you if you'll just talk about the other incumbents that you believe you're in alignment with, and why.
Well, truly, I was in line with all four candidates. I was going to support all four because we have a very good council. Right now, with the new city manager and the things that we're doing, I think that we're working very well. We've got a new city manager. We have things on track. And I was very disappointed when Brian dropped out because I think that right now we have a chance to really get some work done. And I'm looking forward now to a new person coming on board. I'm very happy to join them. Get that. Anyway, did you vote for me, right? Okay. Thank you.
And just for clarification, when he mentioned Brian, he was referring to the incumbent Brian Brennan. So we're now going to go on to our non-incumbents. Brian, we're going to start with you as a non-incumbent. You are obviously running as an outsider and feel that there is a need for change on the council. Which of the current incumbents do you believe you are most politically aligned with, and why?
Well, quite simply, Neil Andrews. First of all, I'm a fiscal conservative, and so is Neil Andrews. I'm very empathetic towards people's needs and very open-minded about people's needs, and Neil Andrews is very open-minded and empathetic to people's needs. Neil reads the reports. I read the reports. Neil thinks. I think. Neil weighs everything without a presupposition of where he's going to be, uses the evidence before him, and then makes a decision. I do the same thing. Neil is very nonpartisan. Neil is very thoughtful about how he makes his decisions and how they impact people. I am the same. Frankly, I'm giving Mr. Andrews an endorsement. I hope he wins. He's my favorite council member in my 22 years of going to council meetings, and he's just the most wonderful council member. I urge you to vote for Mr. Andrews and help him along.
Okay, thank you very much. And now, Richard, your thoughts, your comments about who you feel most closely aligned with and why.
Well, as I've stated a couple of times tonight, one of my real concerns was to see the slippage on the sustainability front. We had a majority council that was really working to a sustainable city. That's now gone. We no longer have a majority that supports those positions. I was hoping to be able to join the council to work with my friend Carl Morehouse and my friend Brian Brennan, and then we could maybe get a few things rolling that would go in the right direction. But with Brian out, at least we have a spot where a real progressive voice can fit.
Thank you. Lori, same question about who you align with on the council?
Well, I believe I stand for the progressive voice as a woman, and I feel like I align with Carl Morehouse the most because he has aligned himself with women's organizations and supporting women's rights. And in addition to that, I don't think it's just Carl Morehouse whose values that I line up with. Again, I would like to say that I appreciate that Neil Andrews does vote favorably for affordable housing and for homeless rights and other issues that would typically be considered progressive, because I think whether you sit from a progressive or a conservative point of view. The important thing is for everyone to work together and not polarize on the issues, because work cannot be done when that happens.
Thank you. Eric, same question to you, please.
Who I align with would all depend on what issues before the council and what vote is on the agenda. Let me give 3 specific examples. The first is affordable housing. I would align myself with Cheryl Heitman in the majority in that case, and I would have voted to support the existing inclusionary ordinance and create a committee that would study ways to perhaps modify in lieu fees, transfer fees, the like. I also would align myself, for example, with someone like Mayor Mike Tracy with respect to marijuana dispensaries, something that I don't think should be in the city of Ventura. With respect to plastic bags, I would align myself with Carl Morehouse. He's someone who, along with Brian, brought to council a ban on single-use plastic bags, which I would welcome and I would support. So in answer to the question, it would all depend on what issue is before the council, and I can't really align myself with any specific block. It would have to be a case-by-case decision.
Thank you. Paul, same question to you.
Yeah, I go along with the case-by-case basis, although Neil Anders being a fiscal conservative, I see myself as that as well. I'd like to have a role, an active role in the city council of looking at the various agencies and seeing where there's overlap and where there's redundancy, and I'd like to eliminate some of that. Brian Brennan was seen as the environmentalist candidate, and I align myself in that area. I see him as, he was a member of the Coastal Commission. That has to do with the quality of our coastline, and I see myself along in that area, being strong in that area as well.
Okay, thank you. David, we'll wrap up with you on this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna get the going with the crowd. I agree that it's a case-by-case basis. There's no one person that I would align myself with at this point. I consider myself to be a logical thinker, not a fiscal conservative, although I am actually personally fiscally conservative. That doesn't mean that I think everybody else needs to be that way. So outside of that, I would say that every issue that comes before us needs to be treated individually, which hasn't happened for a long time when we group things together. We sometimes blur the lines and we forget that each individual issue has a lot of nuances that need to be addressed one at a time, and that's what I'm going to leave it at.
Okay, thank you. And Brian, we'll begin with you. These are the audience questions. There are several, Brian, that talk about libraries. I'm going to try to consolidate a couple of these, or you could share your thoughts about the library. But the question is, we as a city have had one of our libraries closed due to budget shortfalls. What do we do to ensure that the community will have access to this vital resource and service?
Well, first of all, that library wasn't closed because of a budget shortfall. It was closed because of an alleged shortfall that wasn't actually there. I think it was a land grab by the community college district that was endorsed by the council, brought forward by Mr. Fulton, who at the time was supposed to be our representative to preserve our libraries, which he did not do. It's fascinating stuff. Libraries are really important. Benjamin Franklin was our founding father that made libraries an important factor in our lives. I'm a product of libraries. I read like you wouldn't believe. You have to have an educated community if you want to have a good community. You have to have an educated community if you want to maintain your freedoms. Education is the key to everything. And so libraries are the key to everything. We need to fully fund our libraries. Bring them up technologically to make sure we still have the solid material that you can read. Not everything's easy. I prefer the actual printed material. I on the internet, but I prefer the actual myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, your thoughts about libraries? What can we do here?
When I first moved to Ventura, I was a brand new lawyer and I couldn't afford a law library. And so I spent about half a week, every week, at the law library that was provided. The ability for a community to have a library is absolutely fundamental to a civilized society. I think we need another library at the East End. I love the West End Library. It's meeting rooms. I think half of us have had meetings there several times this year already. So it's important to have libraries at each end of the city. I certainly would support one at the East End, where we now are absolutely devoid of having a library.
Thank you. Lori, your thoughts on the libraries, please.
On the east side, when I grew up, we had the bookmobile. We didn't have a library. It didn't hinder my love for reading, it did not hinder my education. I was reading 700-page books when I was 13 years old. I don't believe that necessarily building more buildings and new buildings is a solution in the fiscal crisis that we're in at this point. I think sharing resources and finding unique ways to get access to books for our children is the solution. So improving the current service in our libraries. So we're way behind the curve when it comes to library. I don't know if you visited libraries in other local municipalities, but we're lacking when it comes to technology, when it comes to the internet, when it comes to different types of books that are offered, and just an upgrade in general. And I feel like we need to focus on upgrading what we have and getting it, being top of the line first before we start building more and more with funds that we don't have.
Thank you. Eric, so what can we do to have libraries or keep them in the community?
As you know, I serve on the Library Advisory Commission. Libraries are something that I'm very passionate about. The first thing, the Avenue Library is a great library, and I'm proud that the city is stepping up and helping with its lease. Also, the library that we have downtown, E.P. Foster, fantastic. Many of you may have experienced the summer reading program that my 4- and 7-year-old did throughout the summer. It was great. It's a resource. Libraries bring our community to our city. It's a meeting place. It's a place of enrichment. And frankly, as a deputy district attorney, it's also a method for crime prevention. One of the things that I am very passionate about, and one of the reasons I'm running, is to bring an East End library to Ventura Community Park. We own that land. That 95-acre site at Kimball and Telephone is ours. When a sports field master plan was drawn in the early 2000s, it called for a community center. I'd like for that community center to include a library, also a senior center, as well as a teen center, a safe destination for families and kids.
Thank you. Paul, your thoughts on the libraries, please.
I too am passionate about libraries. When I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money to buy things, but we did have library cards, and we made regular trips to the library. We even had a library where you could borrow tools, which was amazing to me. I thought that was fabulous, not just books. But libraries, my kids both have library cards. We make regular trips to the E.P. Foster. My daughter loves it. She was kind of scared of it at first, but she sees the value of it now, even at 8 years old. I'll do everything I can to make the library successful. But the funny thing about libraries is that they are very resilient. You think they're going away, but then they morph into something different and provide different services that people enjoy. Computers, videos, all sorts of things other than books you wouldn't think of off the top of your head. It's not what a library means to you, but they are changing the way they do business. They are changing the way they bring in customers, and I think that with our support, they can do well for the rest of our lives, of this generation and the next. But I'm happy to help them however I can.
David, your view on libraries?
This was about the Wright Library, right? Kurt, can you repeat the?
So we as a city have had one of our libraries closed due to
The Wright, you're referring to the Wright.
Right, yes, yes.
That was it. I'm sorry. There's a very basic thing that seems to be going on. This isn't about building another building. This was about a building that was already pre-existing that has a library in it. That the city, in all, it did as much as it could, but somewhere the ball was dropped. Not blaming anyone for those who did it, but somewhere along the lines the ball was dropped, because this was a pre-existing location that for years provided a service to children and on that side of town, not only on people on that side of town, but people that were attending college that had young children. The VC Ventura College, which is one of their founding principles, was to have adults that have children. Wright Library was part of that whole thing, and it was, the Wright Library was a mistake that needs to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Jim, we're going to wrap up with you on the libraries.
Well, I would ditto most of what I've heard. I was going to say Brian Lee Ratio hit around the head. There was no reason to close the Wright Library. It was a mistake. Mayor Fulton at the time was Rick Cole, led the process in closing the library. They like closing fire stations too. So I think that we've got a lot of things catching up to do. We have to fund a new library, and we have to fund a new fire station. So there were a lot of mistakes made that we don't want to make again. I think we need to learn from our past and make sure that we get a library on the east side. And I think that the sports park is a good possibility. I've also heard that the bus transition station, the furniture store is a possibility at the City View Mall, which is more of a town center. So I'm supporting any location where we can establish a library.
All right, thank you. Richard, we're going to start with you on the next question. This one is about, let me read you the question. Current code enforcement officials in this city are trying to close down homeless people who are sleeping in their vehicles in church parking lots. What can you do to help these people?
Well, there's a safe sleeping program that there are specific churches that have volunteered to allow their parking lots to be used. And it's my understanding that that's part of the process. And so if code enforcement is trying, or the police are trying to remove people from those particularly safe places, it's wrong. I don't think it's part of the city's policy, and it sounds like a little Lone Rangerism to me. So that needs to stop.
Thank you. Lori, do you want the question again?
Yes, as I began to say earlier about homelessness in the Harbor Church, I feel like if we're going to be displacing homeless communities and there's no strategic plan to figure out where we're going to put those homeless people and where they're going to sleep and where they're going to eat and take a shower, we need to have more comprehensive policies like he was speaking of safe sleeping, and revisit where those social service task force dollars are going and if we can do it more effectively. I think that there's a lot more that can be done, a lot more that should be done, and with the homeless population, women and children are the ones that are being overlooked. We have to remember that there's a difference between the vagrant population of homeless people who may be repeat offenders and be criminalized versus those women and children who are families, who are not on drugs, who need services, who need food, who need showers and a place to sleep.
Thank you. Eric, same question to you. It's talking about people who are living in their cars, sleeping in church, in their vehicles, in the church parking lots. What can you do to help them?
Well, I don't think sleeping in a car is safe. I look at this as a public safety issue. I don't think someone in a car is in a safe location. And what I mean by that is they're vulnerable. So what I would like to do as a city council member is try to identify supportive housing that these people can go into. And the way I would do that is through case managers, through behavioral health, through Turning Point, through Project Understanding, through the Salvation Army. Find these people that are in their cars and say, hey, can you come in? Would you like a meal? Would you like a place to stay? I think that's something that we need to look at, not just as a city, but also as a regional issue, because oftentimes these individuals are veterans, and the burden should not be shared simply by the City of Ventura and its social services network, but also by the Veterans Administration. So my objective would be to get them out of the car, because I don't think that's a safe location, and to put them into supportive housing. Once they're there, they can get services, they can get help, and they can get the programs that they really need.
Thank you. Paul, same question to you about helping these people who are in their cars.
It seems like there's really two types of homeless people, the ones who choose to be homeless and the ones who are a victim of their circumstance. If they are the latter, then of course I'd like to help them. There are lots of agencies, the Salvation Army, for example, they are a big homeless advocate and help the homeless in any way they can. But it does seem like it's not, it's a health hazard and it's also a safety issue to have people sleeping in their cars. There's no bathrooms around for them to use. So they would go in a place where it's, not a good place to go. And if they are the people that choose to be homeless, then I think if we can make it more uncomfortable for them, then perhaps they'll make a different choice. The police would be a good tool to differentiate between those and help us identify who chooses to be homeless and who doesn't. They offer help to the folks who don't wish to be homeless, but not the folks who do.
Thank you. David, your thoughts about serving this population?
Can you just go ahead and repeat the original
Current
question?
code.
Because that's...
Yeah, you're probably wise to let me do that, see if I tell the same story. So current code enforcement officials in this city are trying to close down homeless people who are sleeping in their vehicles in church parking lots. How can you help them?
Well, I can help by saying that, first of all, if they want to make a permitted process, then each individual church has to be viewed within its residency, meaning the church is part of a neighborhood or other things. Sorry. And then the other aspect is that I don't believe that the homeless issue is as simple as people choosing to live in their cars. There is a very distinct, as pointed out, there's a very distinct line between the people that want to live in their cars and the people that don't want to live in their cars because of their circumstances. And until we address the reasons why people are choosing or not choosing to be homeless, that's the only thing that we can do. That's the only thing we can do. And I do believe in safety zones.
Thank you. And Jim, same question to you.
Okay, when we adopted the program that we're referring to, it was because people were sleeping in their cars in unsafe parking lots in public places. And the churches volunteered to open up their parking lots so they'd be monitored, and they'd have restrooms, and they would have a place to park overnight. It wasn't meant to camp out there for months and months and months. It was there to be just a safe place to go that night. The city council has adopted, along with other agencies, to a 10-year plan to end homelessness. And I think that we need to get everybody to participate. We have other agencies that have dollars and ideas and help the cities and the county as well. This is not just a city problem. To work to ending homelessness in the city of Ventura. So I think if we stay on track with this program, we may be able to correct some of those problems. I'll speak for Neil Andrews. This is very close to his heart. I know if he were here, he'd be standing on the table here telling us that we need to work with these people to find a solution.
Thank you. We're going to wrap up with you on this one, Brian.
Well, you know, you don't treat the symptom, you treat the disease. The symptom is sleeping in the car. The disease is poverty. The council for the last quarter century is greatly responsible for this. We need jobs so people can afford housing. We've lost Kinko's, Texaco, the Star, Cost Automation. They're hemorrhaging jobs. Second of all, the council, from the early 90s to the early 2000s, for 10 years, they only built 14 affordable units. They still haven't built enough affordable units. What we need to do is we need to create a work option for people, and we need to have housing that they can afford with wages or salaries that they earn with those jobs. And we have neither. We lack jobs, we lack housing. We need to build jobs, we need to build housing. Appropriate housing for the type of demographics that we have economically and financially. So until we start creating jobs and housing, the safe park solution, as Mr. Francis pointed out, is our short-term triage option. And we can probably do more. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next question, and I'll congratulate all the candidates. You're getting very good at watching the timer and stopping our time, so thank you. So Lori, we'll begin with you on this next question. Ventura's current available water supply will not support the growth planned in our 2005 general plan. Securing new water sources or new water technologies will be very expensive. Additionally, the in-lieu fees are not water. So given this, what are your thoughts on the issue of water?
I felt like it was a good idea to put in place the water restrictions first. Second, I feel like the water, whenever we go about starting new development, it's important to do infill development in areas such as right over here on Stanhone and Thompson, where there was a previous development that was already there and it's an opportunity to build something new without having to find new sources of water because it was already established there previously. In addition to that, when new development is built, I feel like green technology is available in order to find ways to recapture the water, to use resources that are water friendly, and to promote using landscaping that doesn't drain us of the water. So there's a lot of different options out there. So if we as a city can establish standard policy that requires that we include those things when we build, then I think that would be part of the solution.
Thank you. Eric, same question to you about your views on the water supplies needed for growth.
I'm one of those guys who has to interrupt my wife's shower because I think it's going on too long and it's probably going to cost us fortunate, and I say that because, as all of you know, for the last 2 years, when we look at our water bill, it's going up. It's something that I always open with some apprehension. Here's where I think we need to go, and here's the problem. Where I think we need to start really investing our time, energy, and resources is on reclamation strategies. That is taking water, sanitation water, treating it, cleaning it, and then returning it back to our fields for irrigation and landscaping purposes. I really think that's going to be the future. What's happened with the Ventura River because of storms, it simply doesn't give the water capacity it once did. Lake Casitas no longer has the water it once did. And we're also, frankly, in this very bizarre situation where agricultural water costs 3 times less than residential. So that's also something that we're dealing with. And I was satisfied with the Santa Barbara judge's decision, basically saying that's not a practice we can afford. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, same question to you. We're talking about the current available water supply will not support the growth planned in the general plan. So securing new water sources or new technologies will be very expensive. And the in-lieu fees are not really water. So what are your thoughts on this issue?
I frequently joke with my kids that when they leave the tap on, that they're draining the lake at Casitas, because we frequently go to the lake and they've seen how low it is, about 60% of its capacity right now. But an often overlooked and unused resource is gray water. There was just an article in the paper the other day about a company who will come in and retrofit your house very inexpensively. They'll take the water that comes from your washing machine and use it for irrigation. They don't recommend it for crops or things that you eat, but for irrigation, grass, bushes, landscaping, it works just fine. And I think that's a huge untapped resource. So we don't necessarily need to look to new sources of water from the lakes, from the rivers, from whatever fresh sources, but reusing water, being smarter on how we use the water that we do have. So I would advocate moving in that direction.
Thank you. David, your thoughts on the water issue?
This is very complex. First of all, the amount of water in Lake Casitas is irrelevant to our water supply, just so everybody knows. Second of all, did nobody ever hear the term, if it's mellow, let it yellow, if it's brown, flush it down? I grew up in a drought era here in Ventura. It's about conservation. It's about taking responsibility at each house and not wasting, what's the wrong word? Wasting water, which is what we do in abundance. And with the growth issue attached to your original question, that is something that should be considered immediately. It's, do we need to grow? If we can't afford the water, we don't need to grow. Bottom line.
Thank you. Jim, your thoughts on the water issue?
Well, just an observation. Just day before yesterday, I drove up to San Luis Obispo and I went over the mountain past Lake Chuma. And Lake Chuma is down about 90%. I couldn't believe it. The water at Lake Chuma is at the lowest level I've ever seen. And it was really scary to see something like that. So I know that Santa Barbara's got a bigger problem than we have here. But what we need to do here was stated earlier about reclaiming water and reusing it. I think that other cities have developed a purple pipe system where they can distribute water throughout the cities, to parks, to schools, to golf courses, and use reclaimed water more efficiently than we do here. We're dumping by far too much water into the Ventura River that goes out into the ocean. So I think that we need to really get serious about the purple pipe system and use the reclaimed water more efficiently.
Thank you. Brian, your thoughts, please, on the water issue?
Well, first of all, we have to differentiate between real water and paper water. Real water is the water that's delivered through the Casitas municipal water system, 3,000 feet. Paper water is what we have banked in the Fox Aquifer. Currently, what the council's been doing is they've been showing reports that say that we have water that we probably really don't have. We really should only develop on water that we actually do have. We can get some more years worth of development out of gray water and reusing it. But sooner or later, we're going to get to a point where we're going to have to go to the state water. And we have the fixtures in the bridge crossing the Santa Clara River to be able to have that piping put in and have that delivered. But the most important thing that we can do is conserve water and only develop based on real water and not paper water. We have to be careful not to let the developers pressure us into building things that we can't sustain with the water we really have. And they're doing that by saying that we have water, which we don't, which is paper water. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's see, Richard, your thoughts on the water issue?
In May, the city council adopted a water management plan, and the assumption in the water management plan is based on our current rate of growth at less than 1% per year, we have enough water to get us to 2025. I'm not sure about the foundations of those assumptions. I've always been concerned. I was the mayor in 1990, 1991, when we had a major drought. The city was buying low flush toilets for people to install in their homes. We had to pump water across the Santa Clara River Bridge from Oxnard and borrow water because we just didn't have enough indigenous water. That's something most people don't realize. The city of Ventura is completely self-sufficient in water. At the east end, we have wells, and at the west end, we take water out of the Ventura River and from Lake Casitas, ultimately through the city of the Ventura River. So it's really important that we watch our water. What I have been advocating for a long time, I'm having a lot of trouble with some of my council members, some of whom are sitting at this table, is that we just don't have enough for the carrying capacity in Ventura.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with the next question. Eric, you're going to be up first. We're getting close to the end here, so this one is more of a question about what you would have done differently, and then I'll try to squeeze in a few more yes/no questions. But this question is asking about the Golden Ring gash on the hillside above Mid Lane that is visible from Oxnard that was illegally done in 2013. Because this incident was authorized by the community development director, he may have had the authority, but he didn't really have the knowledge, according to the question. So all of this turned out to be a big issue. Homeowners may sue, lots of money. Is this how you would have done things, or would you have done things differently regarding this issue?
I would approach the answer to that question as an attorney, as well as a council member. Anytime, frankly, you deal with someone who owns land and is also an attorney, you got to bring in very early another attorney. That's just the way it is. So in this case, I think and I wasn't there, I don't know the staff conversations, what legal advice was given, so I don't want to in any way impugn people. But I think in a case like this, if somebody at the staff level is determining a land use, what permits are applicable, it needs to be reviewed thoroughly and aggressively and vigorously by either in-house or outside counsel. And as part of any strategy for land use, you have to anticipate and take into account potential litigation problems. So I think that is the way I would have approached it, but hindsight, of course, is always 20/20.
Okay, thank you. And for the other candidates, if you want to add something, but I'm still hoping to hustle through here. So Paul, same question to you about this development that was not originally permitted. Some of you even talked about it in your earlier comments. What would you have done? Would you have done the same as the council or something different?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there, I don't know the details of it, so I can't really form an opinion, but if something illegal happened or something non-permitted happened, then of course we should address it, but I can't really speak to it.
David, do you want to add anything?
No, I would have to actually say the same thing until I saw. I mean, I know my personal opinion on what happened, but that's irrelevant to.
Well, Jim, you were there, so I'll let you answer this one.
Well, my position was it was totally out of feeling. I think my comment was at the city council, they should restore the site to its original condition and not develop any houses up there, put it back into open space and keep it there, as they've done with other projects on the hillside. I had talked with a lot of the neighbors before that, and that was my position all along. I was kind of chastised by the newspaper and some council members by saying that I said something different than what I had said in closed session. And what I had said in closed session, I supported the fact that we're supporting our attorney, who may have had a different opinion than mine. But that's all it was, a different opinion. We could have talked about it.
Brian, your thoughts on this issue?
Well, I'm going to try and keep an open mind based on what I heard in the council chambers. The landowner tried to sell the property to a land conservancy, failed to do that. Wanted to know what they could do with their property to make the property more valuable. In order to do that, they needed to go out and do drilling to find out what the stability of the slope was. They went to the community development director, the speaking with the development director, said, yeah, you should be able to drill, came up with a plan, presented to him. They didn't cut it the way that they said that they would, and then everything else broke loose. And frankly, I think the council did the right thing because it had already been mucked up, that they got the erosion control. They're going to be able to look at the drilling samples and find out what's going on for future reference, and the landowner will be able to know what they may or may not be able to develop on that property. It wasn't well done, and the council found a couple of holes in the system that could be patched up, so that's a good thing, and they're going to do that. So it wasn't good that it happened, but we learned a lot, and I think that we won't make that mistake again, and we'll be better at this in the future.
And Richard, your thoughts on this issue?
I have a little bit of a problem with having to have a city attorney oversee every administrative decision. The real problem is if you give your planning staff authority and it acts on your behalf, you're stuck with his recommendation. And Ariel Colon did a really difficult job trying to analyze what they could do. And ultimately to protect I know Mr. Golden Ring, I know him well, we started practice here in town at about the same time. If we didn't back the decision of the planning staff, we were clearly liable for ultimate liability. And you have to give Ariel the benefit of the doubt in that situation.
And Lori, do you have anything you'd like to add on this?
I just want to say two things. The question is two parts because it's asking what should have been done before to prevent it from happening, and do you think the council has actually made the decision after the fact? And I feel like the decision made by the council was right because they were caught between a rock and a hard place legally with a lawsuit. They made the best decision with what they were giving, and although I disagree very strongly with the grading itself, the hillside should be protected, but at the same time, the city needs to create policies to govern that in the first place.
Okay. So candidates, I'm going to wake you up here because I'm going to make this a little hard. There's 3 questions that are pretty much yes or no. Do your best you can, and then we'll go into the closing statements. The first one is about your stance on medical marijuana. Would you support it? Would you try to monetize it? The other one is other municipalities are passing laws to protect a woman's right to choose. Do you think the city should do that? And number 3, would you support the Safe City initiative to grandfather Ventura's existing housing to ensure people can stay? So your thoughts real quickly on medical marijuana, a woman's right to choose if we should pass laws here, and would you support the Safe City initiative?
I don't want to question you, was it would you pass a law protecting women's right to choose should it become necessary?
Should it become necessary? Thank you.
That last time that I said a question was
Okay. So you're still sweating in 1 minute here, I'm sure, but medical marijuana, your stance. Number 2, if it was necessary, pass laws to protect a woman's right to choose. And number 3, do you support Safe City initiative? Go ahead, Paul.
The medical marijuana is a tricky issue. I mean, if it's prescribed by a doctor, then of course it's the recommended course to go. But the problem for me is that you can then combine alcohol and marijuana legally, both at the same time, and that can cause a big problem for people where either one on its own may not. So it's difficult to bless that completely. I bless it with caveats. The second one.
Would you, if necessary, protect a woman's right to choose?
Yes, I would.
And Safe City initiative, are you familiar with that, to grandfather in the Ventura's existing housing?
The Granny Flats thing? No, I think if something was done illegally or, at the time it was constructed, there were rules against that in place at the time, then I wouldn't grandfather things in.
All right, thank you very much, and well done. Okay, David?
Okay, so, no, sorry, real quick, I'll
Medical
go.
marijuana.
It's already been decided by California, so why is that an issue?
And if it was necessary, would you pass a law to protect a woman's right to choose?
I believe you're speaking of abortion.
The woman's right to make her own choice.
Yeah, why wouldn't she have a right? Why wouldn't
Okay, and the next one was, will you support Safe City initiative to grandfather Ventura's existing housing to ensure people can afford to stay in their safe homes if the clause on grandfathering commercial buildings is removed.
Yeah, well, I can say that, speaking from somebody that grew up here, and my father still owns his house that has a granny flat that was built in 1942 to house returned soldiers from World War II. Yeah, that's, we shouldn't even be, it shouldn't even be an issue. If it's a safe housing, I don't see why the units shouldn't be just left alone.
Perfect, 1 minute, very good. So Jim, your thoughts about medical marijuana?
I think that's a state issue, not a local issue.
Would you protect a woman's right to choose if it became necessary?
I think that's a state issue.
And would you support the Safe City initiative to grandfather Ventura's existing housing?
I think they should, because a lot of these homes that the city is working on now weren't built in the city of Ventura. They were created mostly like this grandfather. And in those days, they were permitted, even though they didn't really have a building permit. The city lost a lot of the permits over the years. They can't produce the ones even if they had a permit. I think if we have a safe housing program, these houses are inspected. If they're safe, then they should be allowed to maintain them.
And Ryan, same questions to you.
Well, people are drinking alcohol and they were killing themselves or getting in bar fights. And we had prohibition and then they brought out the grenades and Tommy guns and we got rid of that and now it's a civilized thing. Marijuana is less likely to cause us problems. The state has already decided through the voters that medical marijuana is legal. I don't see why the city is resisting the people of California on this. I think that they've got to listen to the people of California on this. As far as women's rights, that is a state issue, as Mr. Monahan pointed out, and as far as safe housing, it's clearly something that we can do and can afford to help people have affordable housing. And all we need to do is turn ourselves around instead of putting prohibitions in front of it and new rules, is find ways to actually make it work.
Thank you, well done. And Richard, medical marijuana first.
I've kind of lived and died in this community by the initiative process, both the hillsides and SOAR, and when the citizens have voted to make medical marijuana legal, I would support it. The housing,
the Safe Initiative,
Safe
City Initiative.
Safe City Initiative, I wouldn't exclude commercial. I really think that if the project was built, even if it was built illegally, you can bring it into compliance with current zone, current building codes, you should be allowed to do that. It would bring fees to the city, and it makes everything much safer. I think leaving it unsafe and letting it continue off in the murky blackness, in the black market, doesn't make any sense at all.
And if you had to, if it was necessary, would you
Absolutely.
Protect a woman's right to choose?
No question about it.
Okay, well, you're all doing great, under a minute. Lori, same 3 questions to you. Do you want to start with medical marijuana?
Yes, number one, I don't believe in criminalizing the sick. Standard procedures were developed, and cancer patients, veterans, chronically ill, and those who have nerve disorders should not be criminalized. I feel like dispensaries should not be targeted as the evil in the city that's in the middle of it and needs to be gotten rid of. It's there for a purpose, to serve those who are sick. So yes, I would support that. Number 2, the women's right. Yes, I believe that women's right and access to reproductive rights, it should be safe, legal, and rare, and it should remain there. Number 3, the Safe City, yes, for I'm sorry, what did you call it?
The Safe City Initiative to grandfather Ventura's existing housing.
Yeah, the Safe City grandfathering, I believe, is actually a unique way to address senior housing issues and decrease the number of affordable housing units, so that people have a place to live in the back end. If they're permitted and allowed, then it gives people another option.
Thank you very much. And Eric, we'll wrap up with you. First of all, the medical marijuana.
I'm opposed to medical marijuana dispensaries in the city of Ventura. I think the city of Ventura already has way too many massage parlors. The last thing we need is medical marijuana dispensaries to be near them. Secondly, I strongly support a woman's right to choose. I think this city and this community should continue to provide reproductive assistance to women of all ages and also family planning guidance. With respect to the Safe City Initiative, I too believe that second unit dwellings should be brought into conformity with not only the municipal code, but also with state building codes. I think that's safe for the tenants that live in those second dwelling units. I think that's safe for the neighbors that are near that second dwelling unit. And I also just think it's frankly good for insurance coverage to make sure that in the event something happens, you are in fact able to get that claim paid.
Well, they did it. They got all three questions in now 1 minute. How about a round of applause for these candidates? We're now going to start with our closing statements. The candidates have 1 minute each, and we're going to do it in the reverse order of the opening statements. We're going to start with Jim Monahan, and we'll end with Brian Lee Winter. 1 minute.
Thank you. I don't think it'll be last this time, right? Okay, I'm running for city council because I have a lot of work yet to do. My main concern is to reinstate public trust in city government. That's a big issue with me. With our new city manager and his experience in city of Thousand Oaks, I think we're well on our way to do that. My top priorities are financial stability, public safety, senior services, transportation, cultural development, and a well-planned and designed community. I will work to provide a safe and clean community for all the citizens to enjoy. I will represent you to promote good government, to ensure fair government through city ethics policies, rebuilding public trust in the city of Ventura, and to protect our natural beauty and preserve our limited resources. I will ensure Ventura remains a great place for us all to live. The vote for Monahan is a vote for Ventura.
And our next candidate is David Swaffer.
I'm going to keep this real brief. I started with the opening statement that my only intention is to make sure that the city remains the same within the aspect of my children are the most important future vision. I also want to say that I really respect everybody that actually comes out to be part of the process, which is more important than anything. And this is only my first forum, so I can't really speak to what I will agree to and not agree to, but I am logical. I do listen. I am here to assure that everybody is heard, and that's, I think, the most important thing.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Paul Meehan.
By a show of hands, could I see who has been affected by a crime, either directly or somebody that you know in the past year? I have, and people in my neighborhood have, more than one, and I'd really like to have a direct influence on that. One of the frightening statistics for me is that property crimes have increased by 17%, auto theft by 40% over the last year. That seems out of hand to me, and it seems like the city council should have a direct influence on how that is handled by the police department, and it doesn't seem to be handling it at all. So I'd like to have a bigger influence on that and try to get a handle on it. In my neighborhood, what the solution was to pull up a trailer with a blinking sign on it that said, "Be careful, there's report suspicious activity." That seems kind of weak to me, and I'd like to do better.
Okay, thank you. Our next candidate, Eric Vasarenko.
It's been many years since the city council had a parent at the dais at the city council meetings. And I think it's time that a parent's voice be on the city council.
Can you pull that microphone up to you a little bit?
It's time for a new generation of leadership for Ventura. Fresh ideas, a new perspective, a new voice at the city council. Someone who will look at the city and say, what can we do differently? How can we make it better? I believe how we make it better is by focusing on improvements that people can see and feel. Cutting their trees so they don't slope over traffic. Fixing the potholes at Cemetery Memorial Park so after the push and pull parade, when you go to find your car, you don't fall in a pothole in the process. Going to Marina Park and putting more bathrooms up so when there are 200, 250 kids and families there on the weekend, you don't have to wait in line to get to them. That's how government works. That's what people want to see, and that's what I can provide. I hope you vote for me November 5. And if you vote by absentee, I hope you'll be able to vote for Eric Vasarenko earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next candidate, Lori Brown.
I think one thing that has been unsaid tonight is that Latinos represent 30% of the population in the city of Ventura, and there is a huge lack of representation of Latinos on the council. In addition to that, I'm not Latino, however, I am a minority woman. I'm a mother. I have children in this community. I grew up in this community. And I'd like to see that my diverse perspective reflected, not just mine, but engaging the community and all those underrepresented and disenfranchised voices in the community. So I am committed to fiscal leadership, which means I understand the need for economic development, but not at the cost of human interests and the environment. Public health and safety, because good public health is good business, and civic engagement, because we need to engage those citizens within the community who are underrepresented. And so those three things, human rights, environmental justice, and economic development, are the three things that I think are most important. I have a heart for people, a mind for business, and resolve to work for the city of Ventura. So please vote for me November 5th.
Thank you, and our next candidate is Richard Francis.
Having been on the council, having been the mayor, dropped out of politics of this community to raise my children, I'm now back. I have the experience, I have the vision. I also haven't come completely away. I serve on the Hillsides Conservancy. I'm on the sewer board. I'm on CABC, which deals with homelessness all over the county. I'm on the Mobile Home Rent Review Board for the County of Ventura. I bring real experience, real vision, and not just promises. As to no agriculture being taken out for housing, let me remind Mr. Monahan of the Benoni property on the north side of the 126 at Kimball, and as to no oil wells in the city of Ventura. We've got a map in front of us.
Thank you, and our next candidate is Brian Lee Rencher.
You know, over the decades, I'm fascinated how these people come up, run for council, make all these promises, and then just disappear. You know, I actually keep my promises. In '93, I promised to get your urban forestry maintained. I succeeded. '95, I promised you I'd address school overcrowding. Success. '97, roads. Fixed them. 1999, parks. Built them. 2001, water and sewer. Getting maintained and rebuilt. 2005, public safety. It's been addressed. I keep my promises. I've never been elected to the council, but I make my promises and I keep them. That should say something. That an ordinary citizen such as myself, with a lot of vigor and caring self, can actually do these things. You'd be amazed what I could accomplish for you people if I was actually a council member. So they're going to make their promises, they're going to disappear, and then I'm going to still be there. And I can bet you my last dollar, we're going to see job growth in this city, because that's what I promised you I'm going to get you. You just watch. It's going to happen, whether you vote for me or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. How about another round for the candidate? A couple of quick points. You will be voting for 4 candidates on Tuesday, November 5th, so think about the 4 that you're interested in. I do want to thank Sean Terrace, Brad doing the timing, the other members of the board for everything they've done tonight. And also mention that the Councilman Mike Tracy and Neil Andrews, they were out of town and were unable to attend tonight. So thank you very much. I'm David Merritt. I'm going to have Sean come up. Hold on. Sean's going to come up with the closing remarks. And if you notice, we're right at 8:30, so we're right on time.
All right, so I have a question for you. From tonight's debate, did you get a good feel of where each candidate stands on the important issues we raised tonight?
Yes.
Raise your hand if you, awesome. That was our objective. There was 3 tough jobs tonight. Of course, the hardest job were the candidates who had to address very difficult questions for 2 hours, and you guys rocked. The other 2 tough jobs tonight was Dave Moran working his butt off.